So do I think it's necessary for religion to exist because some people need it to function? So trying to think of how to frame this. There's like I think it might be true that that is typically the case, but it's not necessary, right? Like you could go out and be like, oh yeah, pollution is normal in the environment, but that doesn't mean that pollution is good or that it should be there or that it has to be there or anything like that. So I think that religion is extremely useful. That doesn't mean I'm condoning it. I'm just saying people derive a great amount of use and meaning out of it, and it can be very advantageous for some people. There are pretty good studies, I think, that demonstrate that people have like better life satisfaction and more happiness if they're part of religious groups. Now, some people that are very, very, very anti-religious will be like, those studies there's conflicts of interest and so on and so forth. And to me, I just think, look, this actually makes perfect sense. We're a social species. People are getting more miserable the more technology we have because we are actually disconnected. And I think it's harmful for the development of children too. And what religion does is it gives you a common purpose, a common belief, and it socially networks you. Okay. So it doesn't have to be religion. People get this by being in, fruity little clubs, right? Like, I'm trying to think of one that isn't religious, because like the Shriners and the Knights of Columbus, they are religious, but like, I don't know, Freemasons or whatever. Not only do they drink the blood of children, but they get together and they, have fun and they do things for people. Cancel.
Basically like a social support network.
Yeah. And
communities, actually,
and that's
what you're saying. Right?
That is something that is important for humans. Now, religion is extremely old and extremely, what's the word? Like entrenched. I'm trying to think of a different word, but I couldn't think of one. It's very old and very entrenched, and we've been doing it for so long that it's just part of normal human life. Yeah. And different cultures in different places, but yes. But again, it doesn't have to be religion. Now, funny enough, if let's do something really, I've never talked about this before, but let's talk about something really controversial. Could you imagine a scenario where if you had a magic button, you could, for example, end slavery instantly? Can you think of a reason why it would not be a good idea to push that button?
You're gonna make the same thing, but for religion, and that was like the question I was leading up to. And I think it would be a disaster.
Sure. So yeah, let's just get into that. So I can imagine a scenario. I'm not saying, so let me be clear. I can imagine a scenario where if it was like the 1800s and I somehow had a magic button I could push and it would just end slavery, I could imagine being like, well, actually, hold on. We're going to need to mobilize militias. We're going to have to write tons of legislation. We're going to have to make our society ready for this, because my hypothetical is literally nothing changes except slavery is all of a sudden like illegal or whatever.
Yeah, but that leads to economic collapse, right?
It could do that, or it could just lead to huge social problems. So it would be painful, but you'd have to be like, look, this project is maybe like a couple of years down the road. Like we could just make it happen right now, but it might be a complete disaster. And for religion, I wouldn't want to, like, I would never, if I was going to create my own country and call it like Stanberg or something like that. I don't know. Peterson Island? No, not an island. No, nothing good happens on islands. I don't know, whatever. I would not make religion illegal. Blitz, quit trying to cancel me. I would not make religion like illegal or anything like that. I would fight for like a society that like ours pushes like secular values and doesn't push things to the side, because I think organically the country would just become less and less like dogmatic and irrational, and that would be fine. Because you it's very weird. People that like, I've seen some polling on this too. I saw this one really fascinating Pew Research poll where it just asked people of different like belief systems whether or not they believe in, and it was things like crystals have magic powers, extrasensory perception, ghosts, haunted houses, just like weird stuff, right? They compared a whole bunch of different religious groups. It was done in the United States, and I think all the religious groups were Christian groups, but all kinds of different Christian groups. Then there was one group that, with regard to their like religious beliefs, they just said they were just categorized as nothing in particular, you know? So these are people that would say something like, I'm not religious, but spiritual, you know, something like that. And then there was the atheist group. Now, what's really, really funny is the group that claimed to not be part of any religion whatsoever, that group believed in the greatest number of those things. The atheists, by far, believed in the least number of these things. So what that kind of tells me is people have to believe in something. It's just very, very, very normal and natural. People like myself and Blitz, and I don't know what you believe or don't believe in or whatever, we're a little bit weird, right? So I would, if you just ban religion, then people are going to form extremely important and dogmatic ideas and identities centered around something like a national identity or some insane, power-hungry, type A personality, dictatorial despot is going to go in there and it'll be quasi-religious in some sort of way. Because that's just what happens with people. So to your point that like, do you think it's kind of like necessary for some of the population? Again, it doesn't have to be religious. They'll gravitate towards something, but that's a huge reason why I would never just be like absolutely ban religion, because historically it's done so many bad things. I mean, currently there are some pretty bad things going on, but all you're going to do, let me give an analogy. When people talk about like school shootings and stuff like that, and they're like, look, we just need to have more armed police guards at schools or something like that. And it's like, okay, all that would do is people that want to shoot up places, they're still going to do it. They're just not going to go to schools. They're just going to go to somewhere else. So that did absolutely nothing. And like banning religion is just going to make people believe in other things. And, you know, funny enough, for all the problems religions have, at least they've been around for a long time and they've been restructured. I would say we have the same religions today that we did a very long time ago, except for like Scientology and Mormonism and whatever. But,
that's not a religion.
But they're well, Scientology is. Well, I mean, it is, but it isn't. Those religions are better today than they were. I don't really think you can really argue the other way, and that's just because people are better today than they were, on average. You can obviously
so if I'm hearing you correctly, you'd basically push for like watering the religion down a little bit, whereas to just have the cultural stuff like Christmas and stuff, and have things that people celebrate in mass, and that they can come together and do stuff that they all relate to, without like the moral prescriptive stuff. That's kind of weird, like the homophobia in the Bible and in the Quran, and like the xenophobia and
yeah. I think like things. I can't think of an example off the top of my head where like it was never made illegal or anything like that, but it's a practice or belief that people just organically stopped doing. I can't think of an example like in the United States where that happened. But that kind of thing does happen because I think education, logic, and reason is going to win out in the long run. But there are other times where, like, you know, mild legislative nudges can have huge rippling effects. Like, you know, in the 50s, this is something I show this kind of stuff to my students sometimes, but we look at like research from the 50s where you ask people questions like, what are your opinions on like interracial marriage, for example? And in the 50s, it had like a 80 something % disapproval rating, whereas today the disapproval rating is like 10-12% or something like that. And I think it's like sense. Literally no secret that the Supreme Court said that it's constitutional to be able to do that, and people's opinions just organically change
over time.
Yeah. And so, you know, the churches weren't reformed or anything like that. Well, I mean, like how do I say it?
They've steered a little more.
The government, the government didn't like reform the churches is what I mean. It just reformed the society, and they adapt to the society that's around them. Although the government did kind of reform the Mormon church in a really hilarious way.
I am not educated on that whatsoever, but I'm not American, so I don't know much about like Christianity in America.
So the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has this belief system in its texts that says, it's very weird. They think that Adam and Eve lived in the United States. They think Jesus was here at one point. And they have this mythology that there were all these people, and then some sort of battle or curse happens, and it afflicted the Native Americans, and that's why they have dark skin. And in the Book of Mormon, it also says things like people with black skin, if they convert to Mormonism and if they become righteous, they can actually turn white. So it got classified in the 60s or 70s as a hate group because of that. So the church elders or whatever in the LDS, they got together, and without changing any of their texts, because you can't do that, they just like came together and were like, yeah, that's like not a thing now, because otherwise they would have lost their tax exempt status.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all for my questions. I just want to say, like, I really love your content. Keep doing what you're doing, and yeah, I'm out of here. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.